Kapara, a Dvar Torah for Parashat Tisa. Parashat Tisa, the third of the 5 Mishkan Parshiot, doesn't quite fit in. The other 4 focus on building the Mishkan and its vessels, beginning with the commandment level and ending with the execution. Parashat Tisa interrupts the Mishkan Parshiot with the Egel, a story that isn't clear what it's doing in context with the Mishkan stories. Some commentators claim that Maaseh Egel highlights a fundamental disagreement between Rashi and Ramban as to whether the Mishkan was intended from the outset or was only built as an afterthought. Rashi claims the order of the psukim is different from the chronological order, and some claim that this is proof that if it weren't for the sin of the calf, there would be no need for the Mishkan, thus turning Parashat Tisa to the most important part of the Mishkan Parshiot. It's the reason for its construction. Ramban claims the Parshiot are in order. According to his theory, the Mishkan was intended to serve as a place for Shekhinah, but it couldn't fulfill its purpose until the sin was atoned for. Parashat Tisa describes the reason for the cessation of the construction and the process of repentance required to get everything back on track. For our purposes, what these 2 methods have in common is the interpretation that our parasha and Chet HaEgel are a deviation from the normal order, be it the literary deviation from the historical order in which the Parshiot were written, or the Israelites' deviation from the behavior expected from them. And although there is much to discuss regarding the above ideas, I'd like to suggest that the Torah arranges the passages this way on purpose. If Parashat Terumah describes a utopian dwelling, the tabernacle of Moshe, and Parashat Tetzaveh describes a dwelling that is touched by the hand of great spiritual men, Aaron and his children, it's my non-professional opinion that Parashat Tisa intends to show that although indeed the heavens belong to God, the earth was given to men. Let me explain. In Parashat Terumah, the vessels don't seem to have any practical uses. They're there. There's bread and candles on them, but they're static. They don't change from the ideal state. Parashat Tetzaveh adds priests, clothes, human activity in the Mishkan. There are even warnings that symbolize the possibility of misdeeds, but the deviations are only potential and in the margins. Parashat Tisa teaches a new concept. It opens with Machatzit HaShekel. Every person must give an atonement for his soul, kofer nafsho. Suddenly there's a nefesh for which one must atone. The concept of atonement exists in Parashat Tetzaveh, but it's peripheral. Although Dam HaKippurim is meant to atone once a year, what does it atone for? That is, the verses in the psukim, it atones for the altar. But do you have any idea what the altar did that needs atoning? In our parasha, finally, the concept of atonement behaves as expected and speaks of souls, i.e., people who need atonement. This idea can be recognized elsewhere in our parasha. A kohen who doesn't wash in a kior before work is punishable by death. The oil and ktoret have similar prohibitions imposed on whoever prepares in their format. Desecrators of the Shabbat, any soul that does work, is cut off from its people because this was the day that God nafash. It isn't surprising to discover that among Parshiot HaMishkan, atonement for souls and all that goes with it appears for the first time in Parashat Tisa. This is, after all, Parashat HaEgel. What is surprising is that all these topics were written before Chet HaEgel, without any connection to it. This leads me to the following insight. The Mishkan has several important functions, some of which we have discussed previously, among them a meeting place, the house of time, the place for the Shekhinah, a residence for the Torah, leadership, and more. Our parasha adds that the Mishkan is the source of atonement, regardless of sins committed. I'm not trying to learn from here that atonement is not related to sin. This could be learned from Parashat Tetzaveh, in which the altar is atoned for, and perhaps even from the fact that there's a kaporet even in Moshe's sinless tabernacle in Parashat Terumah. My claim is that our parasha understands that the nature of man's heart is evil from his youth, and that God provides a preemptive cure for this. The center of this week's parasha is Chet HaEgel, an atonement for it, to show how powerful atonement can be. The purpose of placing this parasha in the center of the Mishkan parashot is to show how essential atonement is for the Mishkan. If what I said is correct, then there's no doubt that the Mishkan is lechatchila. I haven't found any good way of translating the phrase lechatchila, as well as the location in the parasha. The remaining question is, to what extent will my view be accepted? If you enjoyed this, please subscribe or send this to a friend. Maybe they'll enjoy it as well. You could also try to buy my book. There's a link below. My name is Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.